Hey everybody. So today I'm going to walk us through using frequency separation in Photoshop to retouch portraits. Let's jump in and I'll explain it as we go along. The first thing we'll do is open a picture to work on. I want to start with a raw file because that will give us the maximum amount of information that we can work with. Here's one we made in the studio the other day. I'll zoom in. Got all kinds of things that we can do to maybe retouch this picture and make this person a little more pleasant to look at. My first step here in the RAW reader, Camera Raw, it's part of Photoshop, but it's actually a separate application that deals with RAW format files. In this case, the suffix is ARW. You might see NEF or DNG or some other RAW file suffix. So when we open it in Camera Raw, I get this image. It looks nice, but let's see what we can do. In the Camera Raw application, you see the exposure information from the camera. It's ISO 200 with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens at 70 millimeters. F16 gave us this good sharp focus, and 1/200th of a second, which is the synchronization speed we needed to make the flash come out the way it did. Under Edit in Camera Raw, I almost always start with Auto to see what it thinks. I'll click Auto, and this is what we get. I'm really surprised that it has done such a bad job of boosting this here. Let me turn that off. Well, in this case, I do not think we're going to be starting with Auto. Under Profile, I'll choose Adobe Landscape or Adobe Portrait normally to get that kind of bluer look that portraits have. Landscape here is more orange. But boy, in this case, I think I do like the landscape texture better. Maybe it's a little too orange, but it gives a healthier glow here. Normally would start with Auto, but in this case, I'm not going to. You can also use black and white or HDR, which is high dynamic range. I don't suggest it normally, but in this case, we're skipping this change and going straight to the profile. And for this image, you might not pick the Adobe Portrait profile because our model here looks way too pale. And so for this one, I'll choose Adobe Landscape. That looks much better. The next change that I usually make in Camera Raw is to tweak the white balance. We can see here it says as shot. White balance in a camera is the temperature of the light. Here we have white balance as shot, which looks like it was 5,900 degrees Kelvin. Let's try Auto. That looks better. It took out a lot of the too much orange, but you still get a nice kind of tone in the skin here. Daylight. A little more orange, 5,500, 5,000, Auto, daylight, and daylight, 500 degrees difference. Here's cloudy, too much. Shade, even more too much. Tungsten, no thank you. Although you see how you can manipulate white balance to get a particular feel or mood. No, not fluorescent. We were using a flash, so you would think that flash would be the most appropriate white balance here. 5,500 is what it says, but we liked it just a little less at 5,000. I'll take that. There are a ton more changes that we can make here in Camera Raw, but this is usually what I do. Auto, Profile, and white balance. Then I open it in Photoshop. Here we have our picture with a good starting point for our retouching process. I'll press Command 0 to bring it up on my screen. And, there's a lot of extraneous information happening here with this portrait. So the first thing I'll do is crop it. I'll press the C key to get the crop tool. And let's make this a 1:1 ratio image. There we go. Command minus so I can see what I'm doing. And I'll grab one of these corners, click and drag to get my guy right there. We have our rule of thirds grid here, and what I'm trying to do is to line the eyes up along that top third. But I'm also trying to, for whatever reason, I feel like I want this bottom shoulder in the image, just for the balance sake, because I think there's too much negative space back here. For today, we can live with it, and I'll click Enter. Now we have our nice square image. Command 0 to bring it back up on the screen. Command S to save. I'll save this as frequency separation tutorial. Save. Now what we can do is start out, let's Command++ and zoom in a little more. Right up here, we see the kind of blemishes on the skin, some little freckles, wrinkles, weird color from the glasses. Let's get some of that fixed up. Before we even get into frequency separation, I'll zoom in a little more and do a little touch up. Look at the great focus on this image, right? You can see the scratches in the glasses lens. So first, I want to keep a copy of the background layer. I want to always have the original version here available to me. So I'll click and drag on it down to the new layer button. I've now created a copy of the background layer. I'll turn the background layer off, leave it locked, and change this to working. Now I always have that original untouched layer. To use some of the healing brushes and tools like that to kind of clean up this 5-head here, I'll go ahead and create a new layer right here with the plus. Click on it, new layer, and I will name that blemishes. Now I'll take the spot healing brush tool that's here under the patch tool or whatever one of these you might have showing. I'll start with spot healing brush. I can see my brush options up here at the top. 70 pixels, which is the size of that circle. 10% hardness, meaning it'll have a very soft edge. You can kind of tell in the thumbnail up here, and all that's good. I can just click and drag across here. Oops. I almost always work with my history brush on, so I can kind of skip back and forth when I make a mistake. So before I use my spot healing brush on this new blank layer, I'm going to choose sample all layers. And what that does is uses the layers below it in order to calculate the fix. So what I'm doing by separating out this blemishes layer is making these changes without committing them to the image now. I can go back and mess with it some more. So let me go ahead and drag that line over there. And you can see what it did. It doesn't look great. It kind of created new texture. So let's try, that's content aware. Let's try proximity match. I'll make a smaller brush, and that doesn't look good either. Go back here in my history, or press Command Z, content aware, and I'll try a different brush. That was the spot healing brush. The one I want to use now, the healing brush. The spot healing brush selects its own source to repair your image. I want to use the spot healing brush so that I select the source that it is sampling from to do its repair. Source is sampled. Brush size is 19. Too hard. I want a soft edge so it blends well. Somewhere down here. I will select current and below. This is the same thing as that sample all layers that we saw before, current and below. And I will come down to where I want to sample from. I'm going to clean up this line right here. I'll press Option and get the little crosshair. Click to select it as the sample resource area, and then just kind of drag over my line. Do you see how it went back to that original part? If I come up here and choose aligned, it will stay in its relationship to the cursor as you go along. Now when I uncheck, the crosshair will appear over here again, right? It stays aligned. One way you can also do this to make it look less artificial is to select different parts and sample from those and do, rather than one long stripe across, just do little bits at a time. Maybe a stray eyelash here. I'll make that brush a little smaller. Press Option over here to sample that area and take it out. Touch up the nose a little bit. Okay, that'll do. Command 0, bring it back on screen. And, well, here, let's plus, zoom in. And I'll show you what we did. So here's my blemishes layer. That's where all of those changes have been made. Looking a little better. Maybe we'll get rid of one more scar. Okay. That's better. All right. That's all the changes that I made as seen on the image itself. Turn those corrections on and off. And there we go. Command minus and Command S to save. Now I want to take these light reflections out of the glasses. We can use the generative fill for that. And what I do is click on the working layer to highlight it with the white frame. Command plus plus plus. I'll use my lasso tool to select click and kind of drag around this shape. You don't have to be too precious with it. The AI can figure it out. Then I'll press Shift and drag around this one. Well, you can see the scratches on this lens too. Okay. Now I've used my lasso tool to shift select on both of these. I'll click Generative Fill, leave it blank so that it'll match things there. Click Generate. There we go. Pretty nice. You get 3 variations whenever the AI does something, whenever Generative Fill creates something. This is number 1, choice number 2, choice number 3. Maybe choice number 3 is the one. So we've got choice number 3 selected, and here's the Generative Fill layer that it just created. Turn the eyeball off and back on. We put it on number 1. See how that looks. Off, on. There's kind of too much eyelash here, so I'm going to go with number 3. Command 0. Zoom back in a little, and there we are. Take that out of the way. So here's where we started. Here's where we are now. File, Save, or Command S. Now we can get into frequency separation. For our picture here, what I'm going to do is combine these changes, the blemish layer and the Generative Fill layer that takes out the glare and the glasses. Shift select to get all 3 of these layers. I'll press Control and then Merge Layers. So all of those changes have now been committed, not separate anymore. So now we have after, before. I'll save it again, rename this one Working, because it took the name of a layer that we merged with it. And I'm going to copy this working layer 2 times. 1, 2. I'll name the top layer High Texture. I'll name the lower layer Low Color. What this means is that we are going to use these 2 layers for the high frequency elements of the image, which are the texture, the lines, the creases, the hairs, the fine focus things. The low frequencies are the colors in the image, and now we can adjust those separately, and it creates a smoother, more realistic, retouched look. So I'll turn off this high texture layer by clicking on the eyeball to hide it. Now I have the low color layer. I'll choose Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur to blur this part of the image just enough to hide all the lines where we can't see the lines. 10 is a good place to start. For this one, I think we'll start with 15 because there's kind of a lot of texture going on that forehead. So I'm going to put in 15 and see what we get. Might be exaggerating these effects a little bit so that we can see. You might want to be more subtle than many of these changes I'm making for effect in this demo. So now we have a blurry layer. I'll turn the top layer back on, the texture layer, and select it. Then I'll choose Image, Apply Image, and I get this option. Source is our image frequency separation tutorial. The layer that we're going to use is the low color layer. You can already see how it changed. Invert is unchecked. Blending mode is subtract. Scale is 2. And offset is 128. Click OK. And now we have this gray thing. Once you're at this level, come on over here to the blending mode dropdown and choose linear light. Now we have the frequency separation is complete. So here's where we started, and here's where we are now. If we turn off the high texture layer, we get the blurry. If we turn off the low color layer, we get super extreme texture. And what we can do now is edit specific parts of this image on the texture or the color layer. So Command plus and see what we got. Take that out. One of the things we want to do here is I'm going to put a mask on this layer. And what the mask will allow us to do, you can see the mask is active now because it has the white frame around it, maybe to soften this effect. So I'll press B for brush, this tool right here. I'll use black to conceal parts of this layer, mask them out, mask them away. I'm going to use a big brush, and I want to make sure that it's very soft, hardness 0%, because I need this to be very smooth. I'm going to change the opacity of the brush to 20% so that we get smaller changes. And I just am going to click and roll around in here to kind of paint away a little of that texture layer. If I want to see what I'm doing on a mask, you can see it right here in the thumbnail. Come over here to my mask, hold down the control key and click on the mask to get your contextual menu and choose disable mask. Right, so you can see what that mask is adding here. Enable mask. So kind of just softened all of that up, made it a little nicer. I'm gonna come out here. Looks like this guy needs a haircut, and I wanna fix that up a little bit too. We'll start out with the healing brush, make it very, very small with the left square bracket key, go onto the layer itself, right, not the mask, and let's see what we can do with these. So the reason this looks terrible is because I'm still using current and below. Command Z to undo that and choose current layer. There. I'm not really trying to take these entirely out. I'm just kind of making it look a little neater. Much better. Right, just, oh, still some little strays up here. That'll do. Okay, so here we are again. Get us a little closer so we can see what's happening and where we started, where we are. I want to go ahead and soften up this nose texture too. So Command ++, B for brush, make it smaller with the left square bracket, normal opacity again on the mask on the high texture layer. And I'm going to go ahead and get this little divot out of there too. Didn't do anything on that mask, right? It's on the mask. Let's go into the low color layer and see what we get. That wasn't what we wanted, and so now we'll go back to our high texture layer, and that was the one we wanted. Now you can see in these eyeglasses that it's kind of a yellow cast from whatever the coating is on the lens. Let's go ahead and see if we can change that. So I want to dial out a little of the yellow in here. For that, I'll click on the low color layer, right? Because that's where it is. You see that? Yellowy brown. Click on the low color layer because that's where I want to make this change. Click on adjustment layers, and I'll start with hue saturation. It's kind of my favorite one. I don't want to change all of the color. I just want to change this color. So I will, on this mask here, I'll press Command I to invert it and hide everything. I'll select my brush and the white foreground color. Go ahead, bump this opacity up to 100% again, and paint my mask around the color that I want to change. And I want to clip this hue saturation change to the low color layer because that's the only one I want it to affect. So I'll hover my mouse over the line between the two layers, hold down the Option key, and click. Now it's attached. This hue saturation will only affect this layer, and within that layer only show what's revealed by the mask. Now with hue saturation, I can click on this hand here to make an exact change right on, on that literal area. Photoshop decided it was a red color. And that's what's happening here. Just dialing back some red from that area, or desaturating some of the red. It looks awfully yellow to me too, so I clicked to select yellow in this list, bump up the saturation to see where the yellow is at. Yes, lots of yellow. If I desaturate it completely, all that yellow turns gray. We don't want that. I just wanted it to be more in line with kind of what's here. And let's see if we could change the hue. Yeah, I think that's a little better cast. Oh, it looks like it kind of bleeds over here. So I'm going to fix my mask. That's better. Yeah, look how nice. Command 0. You know, I made that crop earlier, and I feel like I've left too much in. I don't want all this. I'm really only concerned with this guy's face. This is the thing I want. Now when we zoom in, I can see the thing that I'm looking for. Before, after. Before, after. I think on the low color layer, I want to kind of lighten up underneath these eyes too. Let's see what we can do. I'll use the dodge tool here and choose shadows. Exposure of 10% will make it less of a dramatic change. And I'll zoom in some more, make my brush a little smaller, and kind of click and drag on this dark part under the model's eyes here. Right there. Let's see what we got. Before, after. Save it again. Command 0. I think this color still looks a little unhealthy to me. I'm going to add a solid color and change it to something a little warmer. Now I've got this pink colored layer. What I want to do is come on in here and find the right blend. Overlay is good, soft light is good. Hue is pretty good. Woo, look at that. What I want to do is add a little color to the model's skin here. But I don't want to change the background or anything other than the skin. So what I'll do is click on my background, choose Select Subject. There we go. Now I want that to be a mask. Go ahead and drag this one up here to replace that mask. And now you can see how that color cast change affects only the unmasked part. It really affects too much of it. But we could change this to, anything we want. Just give this guy a little life. Maybe I'll change that opacity a little bit to make it less obvious. All right, kind of this greeny yellow to the orangey red. Let's go ahead and take out some of these strays too. So I've clicked on my high texture layer. I'm going to click on my patch, spot healing brush right now. Left square bracket to make it smaller. Oh, yeah. I do not want to sample all layers here for this. So now we can kind of take that one out and that one. Just clean this up a little bit. Here on the mask, I do want to use my brush tool and black and a little bigger brush to kind of soften up some of this in here. Change my opacity to 20% again and just kind of paint in here. Just to soften things up a little bit. We don't need everybody to be super HD all the time. Let's see how that looks. All right, just a little softer. Just kind of cruising around looking for other changes I might want to make. Command 0. File save, Command S. And here's before and here's after. I'm going to save 2 files now. First, this is everything. I have all my layers on, and I'll choose File, Export, Export as, JPEG, maximum quality. I'll leave it the size it is. 23 by 23 is all good. Export. I'll call this one after. And then I will turn everything off by pressing the Option key and clicking on the eyeball in the bottom layer, right? The one we started with. That's before. Now I'll choose File, Export, Export as, JPEG 7 quality. All of that's fine. Export -BEFORE. So I want to be able to show these side by side now. And the first thing I'll do is press Command A and do Edit, Copy, Merged. What this is going to do is just give us a single layer with all this stuff. I don't want to merge it all together right now. Then I'll choose Image, Canvas Size. I want it to spread out to the right, so I'll click here, right? This is where we're going to start, and the canvas size change I make will go this way in the direction of the arrow. So that's 46, 46, right? 23, 23. 46, 46, okay. And now I'll press Command V and I get this layer that I made earlier. I press my V key, click and drag it over here to sit on the right-hand side after, right? So I've drugged this up to the top of the stack. I'm going to call it after. Then I'll turn off all of these other eyeballs except for my layer 0. This is our beginner, right? Used to be named background, but I somehow unlocked it along the way. I'll just rename it background. And now when I save these, go ahead, Command 0, put the history tool away, press F to change my screen view so we can get it as big as possible up here. There we go. Before, after, and live. So that's a run through of how to use frequency separation when you're retouching your images in Photoshop, along with some layers and masking and blending modes and, you know, a bunch of stuff. I hope that those techniques benefit you as you continue to work on your photography, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with.